Rakhi, your belief in who you are, and just the multifaceted ideology that you have in your, pool of experience, coming from having two parents that were very, very different, understanding who they both are, understanding who you are from all of that, really led you into this entire world of community work. I want to talk about that with you because I know that you have this incredible passion for doing the right thing. And for those people that can't do the right thing for themselves because of whatever reason life has dealt those cards, I feel like you're that warrior that just swoops right in and wants to try and give people the resources that they haven't had, that you've been fortunate to have. So let's talk about what you did in that world of community work. I know it made you travel around the world.
Right.
I know you've participated in so many different scenarios like child soldiers, about, sexual abuse and a lot of things. Where did that start for you?
So I think just growing up in the house that I grew up in with my father and my mother, and the amount that they opened their house up, and just being raised in like PCHS, like it started in our living room. So when you're raised with an organization that comes from your living room, I feel like you have no choice but to help people. Because I did feel privileged. I knew that we were privileged. My father told us every day that we were privileged. So it was my duty to help make this world a better place. So by grade 8, I knew that I was going to spend the rest of my life serving people. I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, but I knew that that was what I was going to do. And so then I went to college for community development and outreach. My father was having lunch with the director, the head of the program, and they were friends, and he had mentioned that there's an international component. And so my father came home to me and said, there's an international component for your program. And I said, I know. And he's like, you should go. And I was like, no, I can't leave my boyfriend. Well, I didn't tell him that. But in my head, I'm like, no, I can't leave my boyfriend. I can't do it. Like, I was like, oh, I'm so in love. And so my dad just called his friend that was the head of a program at the University of Derby and said, listen, my daughter's going to come spend the summer. Find her a spot where she can volunteer and do her placement at. And it just opened my mind. It was a completely different experience, and it changed me. And I know that when I was there, I was like, okay, I have to work internationally. This is critical to my being, for feeding my soul, for exploring what's happening. And through there, I became one of the members of Schools Without Borders. I was part of their Young Leaders Emerge program, and we were taken to Brazil, and we were looking at programming that happens with kids escaping the drug trade. And so this is not from the outside. I was living in a favela. I was living and breathing and moving as they moved to understand what was going on. And that all of those experiences started changing and setting me up for the international work that would come after that. And then I was in Kenya, I was at the World Social Forum. I was seeing different issues. And then I was in Colombia, I worked with child soldiers. One year we were there and we were working with indigenous population, displaced people from the war. And I was in India working with untouchables.
Why is it that you felt a calling towards causes, for want of a better word, or initiatives that were about some form of being downtrodden? Like, what was it about that? Is it because you knew that you were blessed and they weren't?
I feel like when I've traveled, I've received more than I've given. It was like a responsibility you feel because you're living in I was living in such a privileged place. And so it's a responsibility you feel, but just being aware of what's going on in the world, I think, was so important and critical. And in my travels was when I started understanding how important documentation was. I was at the World Social Forum in Kenya, and I went through a 3-hour workshop by the National Federation of Dalit Women. And that was the first time I had heard about the Dalit community. And so I was so traumatized. One of my friends was staying in Kenya, and I called her over in Nairobi. Like, she was in the middle of the night, and I was so traumatized. I'm like, I need you to come over, and she hopped in a cab and came. And then I just was like, how come we don't know about this? How come we don't know about this as South Asian women? What is going on? And then when I came back, I was so angry at my parents, like, how dare you guys never told me about this? And then they told me about their struggles, about what their education system was like, and that they were never taught about this. And so then I really started
Like almost like a propaganda? you think?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And looking at then who writes history? Well, like look at the word history. It's a history.
Yes.
So who's writing history? The victors, the
him.
males.
Yeah.
Like the perpetuators of war, the victors. And so then whose story is left behind? And then that started really, I started focusing on that. And then through that travel, there was a moment, Natasha and I were traveling. Natasha is one of my best friends. We were traveling and we stopped at a village. And 10 Dalit women had had their husbands murdered over land. They were allotted land by the government. It was like horrible land, but then they threw up the national highway. And then that land went up in value. And so then one night, all of these husbands were murdered. And so these women went to the police. And the police said to them, well, do you have birth certificates? And they're like, no, we don't have birth certificates. And they're like, do you have pictures of your husbands? And they're like, no, we don't have pictures. Like the extreme poverty they were living in. They're not going to worry about a photograph at those times. They were worried about feeding their children. So the police said, well, you have no pictures, you have no birth certificates, there's no documentation. That means no crime took place because your husbands never existed. So immediately these women weren't considered widows, they were now prostitutes. And their children then became children of prostitutes. And so then it was like a snapping moment. Natasha and I did an 11-hour drive. I think we didn't even speak to each other. We were so traumatized.
Documentation is very important to you. You've used it to really talk about why it's important to be able to get messages out beyond, your own experiences. Share what you know that you were never shared, right? Mutta Productions. Let's talk about the stories that you tell. Let's talk about why you tell them and what you feel is the message that you are putting out there for people.
Like I had said, like the trauma was so much, I would come back from these places and not be able to move for weeks at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, like I was like just in a vegetative state. And I actually, at those times, I would watch 3 Bollywood movies a day and just lay on the sofa and not move. Because it was this idea of escapism, and it allowed me to escape. And so then I was like, I can't do the front line anymore. It was too much trauma, but I still wanted to bring attention to different issues. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna create this production company. So it's called Miss Mutta Productions, Inc. And a lot of people told me not to put the Miss in front of it. But the Miss was so important for me to put in front of it because I wanted women to be able to see it and know that it was a female-run and led production company. And knowing that I would always honor the stories of sisters and our communities and the issues that we face and be real with them. And so that was really where that concept came from.
So let's talk about some of the work that you've done under that umbrella.
Okay, so we did 2 short videos, one on honor killings and one on elder abuse. They're more service provider types of videos. And then I ended up shooting Punjabi Mime Through Time.
Yes.
Yes.
What a massive putting you on the map kind of concept.
Right.
Now, was that deliberate or was that a bit of fun? I mean, was there like an underlying message there that was bigger than the fun of what we experienced, what the whole world experienced?
Right. I think with me, you're always going to find a message somewhere.
Yes.
So I actually didn't know that sketchy was a thing, to be honest. I saw the Bollywood Mime Through Time. And then I was like, oh my God, this is a cool idea, but I really feel like we could step it up a notch. And we should look at Punjabi music. And Punjabi music has been so important. It was such an important part of me growing up. And you see it in different types of music, how it influences different types of music. So then I was like, we need to do this. I wanted to do it to honor. And I do a lot of my storytelling to honor my culture, the stories that I respect. So that was one of the first reasons I wanted to do it. And I thought it would be cute. Did I think it was gonna go viral? No. I actually was gonna be happy if we got 500 views.
Wow.
GIRN said, Rakhi, let's be realistic, we're gonna get around 5,000 views. When we woke up the next morning, there was 16,000 views. And now I think we're at 22 million views.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Even Perez Hilton tweeted about it.
Yes.
And obviously, Anarkali is also an extension of that. It's been a tremendous web series. Why did you decide that you wanted to do something like this on the web? And what did you think you could talk about that hasn't already been talked about in our community?
Okay, so I actually wrote Anarkali when I was 19 because I was tired of seeing shows like 90210 and there's like no brown people, and I couldn't necessarily relate at that time. So like our nuances of dating are different. Like some of my friends were allowed to have boyfriends, but you couldn't call them boyfriends, but they're allowed to have friends that were boys. Some of them couldn't even have received phone calls from boys. But where were those stories?
Right.
Right? Where were the arranged introductions, which has happened to me numerous times? So where was that? So I had written that at 19 actually, and then I was insecure. And that was one of the reasons why I feel like documentation is so important, because I was like, who's gonna think that my stories are important? Who will put, because I had never seen brown people on screen in a healthy way without like the accent, like just regular brown
caricatures, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, one, I'm a female. Two, I'm Indian. Who is going to give me money to direct a film? And if they do, who's going to want to watch it? Because we've never even seen these characters. So I myself was limiting my vision. And so then, but it kept haunting me. Anarkali kept haunting me. And I kept adding to it. It was a film. I wrote it as a screenplay first. But I was like, I'm never going to get money to fund this. And then I was like, oh, let's turn it into a blog. And so I did. I wrote the first 3 blogs. And I was like, this is too important to be a blog.
Right.
So then I was driving to actually the Sikh Feminist Conference in Michigan. And the organizer asked me to pick up 2 young women. One was GIRN Rai, who's K-Ray. And the second was Rupi Kaur. And it was just like, this.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, because I looked at Gideon. We had spoken probably, it just been an hour in the car. And I said, oh my God, you're Anarkali. I hadn't even seen her work, but I just knew it. And I was like, I want to shoot this web series. And she's like, let's do it. We met in November. By February, we had it shot. And that was just this strength and this trust and this sisterhood, and how we all just wanted to see ourselves on screen and our stories being told. And Rupi Kaur was kind enough to come in and do poetry.
Right.
And I think it's just that. And I always say this because I think it's so important. There was 23 people on set. 21 were Punjabi women.
Wow.
And I think that's so critical and so important. For that's how much they believe in the stories being told, because we've never seen it. And I get emails all the time saying, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is so important. These are the stories I can relate to. This is exactly how my mother is. And we've never seen that, because you're seeing Friends in a multicultural city like New York, but there's no people of color. And you're seeing 90210. You're seeing all of these shows, but you're not seeing anybody that represents us accurately.
Right. Anarkali has made it into its 2nd season. Why do you think that it's been, really as successful as it has, that you wanted to maybe go into another dimension of what this could be?
I think the first season was just even scratching the surface. We didn't even get into the nitty gritty. We didn't even get into the emotion. And to be honest, we were playing. First season, we didn't even know if anyone would like it. We didn't know. We were playing with the lengths of the time. That's why you'll see like the episodes are all different time lengths, till we found something that worked. And so I think with the support of the community saying they wanted to see a 2nd season, we shot a 2nd season. And I think in 2nd season, you'll really see the characters grow. You'll see the vulnerabilities, the emotions come out now, which I think is very different from season 1. It was a lot of fun. And I think in season 2, you'll see a lot more drama.
That's wonderful. I can't wait to follow up on the 2nd season. What else have you got going on, lady?
Oh, lots of stuff is going on. So we are actually in pre-production for another series that looks at a young Indian teenage girl who's arrested for the murder of her boyfriend. So that's different. It's like a mystery romance type drama. So I think that's really cool. And then there's another web series in the pipeline looking at for the later end of the year that looks at what happens when 5 Indian guys become millionaires overnight.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. And we're also...
comedy?
That will be a comedy, a lot more fun, different, very different,
Well,
right?
it's interesting that all of a sudden now you're delving into the psyche of the male after, being so dedicated to, the story of the female. Tell me why you decided to do that.
Well, I think actually... I don't think you can have women's stories if you don't have progressive male stories as well. And I think we want to empower women, but we cannot do that without empowering men as well. So women are going to change, but men also need to change. It's just not enough that we're encouraging women. If we're not doing the same to men and showcasing those characters, well, we're never going to see a change.
And on that note, Rakhi, it was a tremendous pleasure sitting here, getting into your psyche, getting into the ideology of, why you do what you do. I know that you're blessed to be able to tell the stories that you do. And I can't wait as your journey keeps unfolding, because this is really just touching the surface, I believe, of some of the experiences that you've had, that you've seen, that we should really get out there in our community and way, way beyond that. I want to see it on national television.
Right?
Yes.
Push for it.
We're going to make it happen.
Awesome.
Thank you, my sweetheart.
So much.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the same about you.
Hi everyone, this is Open Chest TV with me, GIRN. If you like the chat that you just finished watching, I really hope that you will subscribe to my channel for more intelligent, provocative, relevant conversations with some of your favorite celebrities.